Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Todd Zagorek. My pronouns are he, his, him. I'll be the service coordinator this morning. There are 8 billion people in this world, and most of them are not here this morning. But if one of them were to call you and your phone were to ring, that would be kind of embarrassing. So if you haven't had a chance to turn off your phones, now would be a really good opportunity for that. However you're feeling this morning, whether you're happy, you're sad, you're puzzled, you're sleepy, there's a place for you here. And together we will make this a morning of celebration, of community, togetherness, support, friendship, kindness, and hopefully inspiration. And we're glad that you're here. It's good to be together. If this is your first time visiting with us, we have a part-time minister, Reverend Tony Lorenzen, and he is in the pulpit every other week, but not during the summers. So during the summer, we fill the pulpit either with guest speakers or members of our own congregation. And this morning, our own Jeremy Stein will be our presenter. And our pianist today is Ann Quackenbus. Ann's the choir director and pianist for the Mattituck Unitarian Universalist Society in Southbury. And they don't hold services during the summer, so she was available, and Rev Tony asked if she would come and help us out, and she graciously agreed to do so. So thank you and welcome. Child care and children's programming are paused for the summer. Families with young children are always welcome here in the fellowship hall, but if there, do I see any children? Yes, I do see children. If you wish to go downstairs and use the lower level, you may. The main area and the nursery downstairs are available. There is a monitor there that can be set up to watch the services if you would like. An adult has to be with the children at all times. And we also have crafts and toys and books and things here in the fellowship hall for children and, well, for anyone who needs extra entertainment. And our regular children's programming will resume in the fall. As always, we honor with gratitude the Pequot, Pequannock, Schaghticoke, and Wappinger tribes on whose ancestral homelands we gather. The Housatonic River watershed within which this land is situated has long been home to many indigenous communities. We recognize these tribes' enduring presence, their care for this land, and their continuing sovereignty. May our presence here honor those who came before, and those who will follow in care of this sacred land. If you've been following occasional announcements and messages in This Week at UUCD and in the monthly comment, you will know that we have solicited proposals from Native American artists for some artwork for the Fellowship Hall. The selection committee, which was composed of Alex Mackay, Joan Campbell, Suze Shaner-Brodax, Dan Brodax, and Darlene Kasich of the Schaghticoke Nation, have chosen the artist, Eva Newell of the, let's see, I practiced this, the Pokanoket, that's it, the Pokanoket tribe. If you've heard of the Wampanoag tribe, that was actually the name that was given to the people by the European colonists. They actually call themselves the Pokanoket. And Eva Newell will be producing a 3-part mosaic for us, a composition that depicts elements of Native American life and tradition. And we're very excited about it. We're planning the unveiling for November 1st. Did I forget something, Suze?
That's perfect. The only thing I wanted to add is it just so happens that next Sunday, if anyone's here, she's going to check in on the space. So she will be here right at 11 o'clock right after the service.
Oh.
If anyone would like to meet her.
Okay. Sue's just pointed out that our artist, Eva Newell, will be here next week in the Fellowship Hall at 11 o'clock. She wanted to see the space where the artwork is going to be. So if you're here next week, you'd have a chance to meet her. The unveiling is planned for November 1st, either during the service or immediately following the service, and we're hoping to have a reception for the artist at that time as well. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to be great. So before we get started, let's greet your neighbor here in the fellowship hall. Wave to the folks who are joining us by Zoom. and then we will get on with the service. A few announcements. The evening women's group will be meeting this Tuesday at 6:30 in the lower level of the fellowship hall. For more information, you can see either Darlene Anderson Alexander or Joanne Davidson. The men's dinner group will meet this Wednesday at 6 o'clock at the Tomo 202 restaurant in Brookfield. Please see Alex Mackay for more information. You probably thought the pledge drive was over. You would be wrong. Not quite. Not quite. It actually never ends. And we received a few more pledges recently, bringing our total to $212,862.59, which is 7% more than last year. Thank you for your generosity. It is also more than we budgeted for the year. Yeah, we budgeted 210,000 if you'd seen the budget. So we got a little bit above the budget on our pledge drive. Thank you. Thank you. And if you haven't had a chance to pledge yet, it is never too late. Please see your order of service, our weekly online newsletter this week at UUCD, or the monthly comment for a complete list of everything that's happening in the congregation. It's time for our chalice lighting, and I have failed to recruit a chalice lighter for us. I'm going to need a chalice lighter. Anybody want to? Okay, cool. We make this time and place holy simply by being together. Okay, there's, you see, yep. There you go. Please join me in the words for our chalice lighting affirmation. The word, may this flame cast its light in the coming days, reminding us that the future is not simply a place we are going, but a place we are creating. Unitarian Universalists don't have a creed or a dogma. It's our covenant promises to each other about how we practice loving community that hold us together. And let's renew those promises now. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. Our welcome music today will be an instrumental piece, When I Fall on My Knees with My Face to the Rising Sun, arranged by Rosamond Johnson. And join me now in our children's affirmation. So, using the air, we're Unitarian Universalists, people with open minds, loving hearts, helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. Thank you. Our story this morning is called We Disagree. And if you're looking for a gift for a child in your life, here it is. It's really kind of a fun one. Heather Smith found this for us. And now we've got our readers. The blue squirrel, the blue mouse, and the red squirrel. All right, we're going to need to be by the microphone.
Good height.
That is for me.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Hello, hello. Do you like figs?
Oh, no, I don't. I snack on twigs.
Do you like blue and polka dots?
No, I like red. I don't like spots.
Do you like newts and toads and frogs?
No way. I just like prairie dogs.
Do you like warm and sunny skies?
I prefer gray. Sun hurts my eyes.
Do you like skates? Do you like bikes?
I don't like wheels. I'd rather hike.
You must like flutes, guitars, and drums.
No, no, and no. I'd rather hum. Hum, hum-de-dum.
What's wrong with blue? What's wrong with frogs?
What's wrong with gray and prairie dogs?
We don't agree. We can't be friends. There's nothing more. This is the end.
Yes, I agree.
Wait, what did you say? What happens next? We just agreed. I'm quite perplexed. We're not the same.
Indeed, that's true.
Agreed again.
But why choose blue?
Well, blue is sea and blue is sky.
But red is leaves and cherry pie.
Hey, let's disagree more.
Let's disagree, yes.
Do you like friends?
I'll let you guess.
Thank you. And now we're going to sing this little light of mine because you are either a child or I think some of you used to be children. It's time for our milestones. So I invite those of you who would like to silently acknowledge a milestone, a joy or a sorrow or a thought, a prayer, something in your heart. Please come forward now. Feel free. Place a stone in the bowl. We hold all of those comments in our hearts. It's one of the most important parts of our service, I think. I think all of us probably feel that way. It's time for our offering. When you share your time and your financial support with this congregation, you're giving gifts to each other. Everybody gives, everybody receives, and together we give to the larger community around us. The greeters will now pass the collection plates. And if you're visiting us, you're not expected to give. Your presence here is your gift. You can also give using the QR code that you can see on the screen. You can go to the website at any time, uudanbury.org, and give there, or mail a check to 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. Also, if we could get someone who I've also failed to recruit someone to collect the food offerings. So I think the basket is right down there. If I can get a volunteer, we can collect the food offerings for the Dorothy Day Hospitality House at the same time. And thank you again for your generosity. Thank you, Anne. And now our guest lecture, sermon, message, exhortation, our own Jeremy Stein.
So, good morning, everyone. Before I begin, can we just have a round of applause for my good friend Todd, who every week it's like a one-man show, and nobody else wants to do it. So thank you, Todd, especially, and also for being on the board. Something else no one else wants to do is so. Yeah, so shortly after 2024 election, my wife and I, Yvonne, say hi, Yvonne, if people don't know Yvonne, we found ourselves sitting at the kitchen table and we're having conversation. I suspect many people here and many Americans had. We weren't discussing polling numbers or replaying the election in our minds, which we had already done over and over and over, and we couldn't understand what had happened. We were talking about Thanksgiving and not the menu or who was coming or what dessert we were going to have. It was whether or not we wanted to go at all. And, we were wondering, are we going to talk about politics at the dinner table? How do we avoid these conversations? Could we be comfortable in silence? Could we even spend the entire day with family pretending like nothing happened? The people we were talking about weren't strangers. They were family. It's the people we loved. It's the people who celebrated birthdays with us, sat with us, next to us at weddings and funerals, and held our children when they were babies. And yet, after this election, something felt very different. Not because we loved these people less, but it was because the consequences of politics no longer felt abstract. They were real. And for much of the previous year before this election, as some of you may know, I had worked very closely with the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And whatever your politics are in this room, what you need to know is that the people in that office came to work every day looking to help save lives. And before the new administration had even settled in, before the inauguration, this office was dismantled. It was shut down. This is a place that literally saved people's lives. And over the months that followed the inauguration, members of our own family were very directly affected by some of the new policies, especially those concerning transgender Americans and immigrants. A friend of ours was literally dragged out of her car just a block away from here in front of the police station by ICE, dragged through a broken window because she was taking down license plate numbers. And our oldest daughter, who now lives in Minnesota, lives only blocks away from where Alex Pretty was shot and murdered. These were no longer headlines. These were people we loved. So Yvonne and I found ourselves asking this question I suspect many of you have asked over the years. How do we gather around the same table with people whose choices we believe may contribute to real harm? How do we remain honest without becoming hostile? How do we protect the relationships without pretending our differences don't matter? Because beneath every conversation about election lies a much older and more difficult question. How do we remain family when we no longer experience the world in the same way? And I suspect many of you know that question. Maybe it isn't about politics at all. Maybe for you, it's about religion, especially in a place like this. Maybe it's about immigration, Israel, race, climate, LGBTQIA plus rights. Or maybe it's simply this: why are you a Unitarian hanging out with those tree huggers? Or perhaps your deepest division has nothing to do with public issues at all. Perhaps they're old family wounds that never really completely healed. Whatever the source, many of us know what it feels like to sit across from someone we love and silently wonder, how did we become so far apart? Or how did I even come from these people? Where did I come from? Not these people. I wish I could tell you I had an immediate answer. I didn't, and I don't, and I'm not sure I do now. I'm just gonna try. I'm gonna wing it here, folks, for the next 20 minutes. Uh, and if I'm honest, my first instinct in trying to solve this wasn't really curiosity. It wasn't compassion. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't grace. It was rejection. It was anger. I talked to Yvonne and I said, maybe we simply shouldn't talk to these people. Maybe silence would be easier. Maybe if we stayed busy enough during dinner time and if we passed enough mashed potatoes and asked for gravy enough, we would avoid those matters that mattered most. And maybe if we just left the table, or didn't come at all, we could avoid the conflict altogether. Then, somewhere during those conversations with Yvonne, I realized I had been asking the wrong question. The question wasn't, how do I survive Thanksgiving? The real question was much harder. How do I continue to see another person's humanity when I believe some of their choices are causing real harm? Nearly 200 years ago, Frederick Douglass stood before an audience and delivered one of the greatest speeches of American history. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I recently heard this. I hadn't heard it in a while. I heard it in Ridgefield during the July 4th celebration. And after pages and pages where Douglass gives searing criticism about America, he turns ultimately towards hope. He points to the Constitution not as a promise fulfilled, but as what he famously called a glorious liberty document. He was not naive. He knew this nation's cruelty because he lived it. Yet he refused to surrender hope. He criticized America not because he hated it, but because he believed it could become better. That distinction feels desperately important today. There is a profound difference between criticizing someone to humiliate them and challenging them because you believe they can grow. One seeks victory, the other seeks transformation. I wonder if we've forgotten that difference. Our public conversation seems less interested in changing hearts than in winning arguments. Social media rewards certainty, cable news rewards outrage, algorithms reward conflict. Little by little, people become labels instead of neighbors. The liberals, the conservatives, Trumpers, the extremists, DEI, MAGA. Whatever label we choose, the result is the same. The individual disappears. In the language of my own tradition, Judaism, and the language of Unitarian Universalism, we lose sight of, yes, the inherent dignity and worth of every person. And once that happens, dialogue becomes almost impossible. It's remarkably difficult to listen to someone you've already reduced to a stereotype. I wish I could tell you I learned that lesson here. I didn't. I learned it in a hotel conference room in Denver. As many of you know, I spent the last decade as a lobbyist and advocate for gun violence prevention. Several years ago, researchers at Tufts University invited me to participate in a pretty unusual project to gather people from all different walks of life to come to a consensus and create model legislation. Around one table, they gathered all of us, advocates like me for stronger gun violence prevention laws, and people who strongly defended on the other side, people who strongly defended the Second Amendment. And I'll be honest, my first thought wasn't like, this is going to work, this is profound. My first thought was, well, at least I get a free trip to Denver. I really didn't expect much. If Congress couldn't solve these disagreements, especially after 20 children were killed right down the road, what chance did I have, and what chance did a handful of advocates sitting around a conference table have to solve this? Still, something made me go. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was hope, maybe just good airline miles. Whatever the reason, I boarded the plane, convinced I already knew these people I was about to meet. And I couldn't have been more wrong. When I stepped into the conference room, I was convinced I already knew these people I was about to meet. Not individually, but I was certain I knew who they were, what they believed, and why they believed it. These were the same kinds of people I had spent years lobbying against at the state capitol. The same people who often saw me as the enemy, just as I saw them as the enemy. It didn't take long to discover that I was wrong, because before we discussed a single policy issue, the organizers gathered us into a circle and they asked us this simple question. Tell us your story, not your position, your story. Why are you here? What brought you to this work? What shaped you? As one person after another spoke, the labels began to disappear. One participant grew up in rural Montana where hunting wasn't politics, it was how his family put food on the table. Another spoke about military service and the responsibility of carrying a firearm. Another woman described escaping an abusive relationship and the security she found in being able to protect herself. Others shared the pain of losing a child to gun violence, surviving a mass shooting, or spending years as a police officer responding to tragedies, or as a first responder in an ER, seeing things that no one should ever witness. As I listened, something inside me shifted, not because I suddenly agreed with everyone, I didn't. Not because my policies changed, they didn't. What changed was something more fundamental. I could no longer reduce anyone in the room to a stereotype. They were parents, veterans, teachers, neighbors, friends now, human beings. It turns out it's remarkably difficult to hate someone once you know their story or how they became who they are. Instead of asking, how could someone believe that? You begin asking, what experiences brought them here? Over the next several days, something unexpected happened. We started eating together. Breakfast turned into lunch. Lunch turned into coffee. And yes, we drank a lot of coffee. And yes, the constant flow of alcohol helped. Didn't hurt. Sorry, honey. We laughed. We teased one another. We discovered mutual friends. We talked about kids, parents, aging parents, baseball, music, everything except politics. Those ordinary moments matter because relationships are built in ordinary moments. Eventually, we return to policy. Those were very spirited conversations, yes, sometimes frustrating, sometimes exhausting, but something fundamental had changed. We no longer question one another's sincerity. We could say, I think you're wrong, without implying, I think you're evil. That may be one of the greatest losses that we have today in American public life. We've confused disagreement with moral failure. We've forgotten that good people can look at the same evidence, love their families with equal devotion, and still reach very different conclusions. Once we understood that, the conversation became more creative. Instead of asking whose solutions win, we began asking, what problem are we trying to solve? And that really changed everything because beneath our disagreements, we discovered remarkable agreement. Everybody wanted children to come home safely after school. Everyone wanted fewer suicides. Everyone wanted communities where families could flourish. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs once wrote, the things that unite us are stronger than the things that divide us. By the end of the project, we actually drafted model legislation supported by people who only days earlier assumed this was not possible. No one got everything they wanted. Everyone compromised, but everyone left with something far more valuable than victory. We left with trust. And at that experience, I've come to see a couple of lessons in there. One, curiosity is more transformative than certainty. Certainty ends conversations. Curiosity begins them. Second, I learned relationships come before persuasion. People rarely change because they lose an argument. They change because someone they trust invites them to see the world differently. And I know that's really hard to do right now. And finally, healing begins when we seek common purpose instead of complete agreement. And I think this was the most important. we were looking for the why when we were talking to one another. We tend to argue over policies while overlooking the hopes and the hopes beneath them. Things like fear, security, freedom, justice, responsibility, belonging, love. Those values that are often beneath some of our opinions, those values are often shared even when proposed solutions differ dramatically. We all want some of the same things. Seeking common purpose should come before common opinion. Martin Luther King reminds us hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh put it another way. Understanding is love's other name. Different traditions, the same wisdom. Healing rarely begins when someone wins. It begins when someone chooses to understand. As I left Denver, I realized something had changed. Not my politics, not my values, not my commitment to preventing gun violence. What changed was my understanding of people who disagreed with me. I no longer saw opponents. I saw friends. I saw fellow citizens, people carrying hopes and fears remarkably similar to my own. That realization didn't erase disagreement, but it made contempt impossible. And perhaps that's where our healing begins, not when we all think alike, but when we refuse to stop seeing another as fully human. It's one thing to sit in a conference room with strangers and have a respectful conversation. It's another thing entirely to love someone whose decisions you believed has caused real harm. Because sooner or later, every one of us encounters someone whose words have wounded us, whose choices have hurt people we love, someone whose worldviews feel impossible to understand. And when we are forced to answer perhaps the hardest question of all, can I continue to recognize your humanity without minimizing the harm I believe that you have caused? Justice matters. Truth matters. Moses spoke truth to power. Jesus confronted hypocrisy. Dr. King challenged racism. Our own Unitarian Universalist tradition has never confused civility with justice. We are called to repair the world. And for those Junitarians or you Jews among us, tikkun olam, repair the world. But we are also called to remember the humanity of those with whom we struggle. Holding those truths together may be one of the hardest spiritual disciplines of our time. I recently read an essay entitled, How to Stop Hating Trump Supporters, and why it doesn't require you to suspend your moral judgments. It described a woman named Joan who asked a question that has stayed with me. How am I supposed to love people who voted for policies I believe will hurt my family? Perhaps you've asked your own version of the questions. How do I love someone who dismissed my experience, who spread misinformation, who refuses to acknowledge injustice, facts? Those are not abstract questions. They're painfully real. It's easy to love humanity in the abstract. It's much harder to love a particular person, the one sitting across the table from you, the one whose social media posts make your blood pressure rise. That's where our tradition offers a deeper understanding of love. In Hebrew, the word ahava is less about emotion than commitment. It's about unconditional love. It's choosing relationships even when feelings fluctuate. In the New Testament, they talk about agape, not to be confused with my sweetener, agave. But Dr. King described agape as understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill towards all people, not approval, not agreement, redemptive goodwill. The hope that another human being can become their best self. King never suggested we stop resisting injustice. He devoted his entire life to it. But he insisted that hatred could never create justice. Hatred may defeat an enemy. Only love can transform one. That is both inspiring and incredibly difficult because there are days when I don't want to pray for someone. I just want to win, especially in November. Maybe you've had days like that too. There's another story I want to share. It's about a friend of mine, Reverend Sharon Risher. And in 2015, a white supremacist entered Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston and murdered 9 people while they were in a room just like this during Bible study. Among them was Sharon's mother, Ethel Lance. If anyone had reason to live with hatred, it was Sharon. But instead, she and her entire congregation, they chose to forgive the shooter. Not because he deserved, not because justice no longer mattered, not because she forgot. She forgave because she refused to let hatred become the organizing principle of her own life. And that distinction has stayed with me. Forgiveness is rarely something we do for the person who harmed us. It is something we do so hatred doesn't imprison us. Nelson Mandela understood this when he wrote, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." Hatred rarely destroys only its target. It slowly reshapes us, the one who carries it. When another person makes you suffer, it is because he suffers deeply within himself. That is Buddhist. That doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it reminds us that hurt people hurt people. Someone has to interrupt this cycle, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Which brings me back to my lovely wife, back to Thanksgiving, back to the person whose faces, or people whose faces come into my mind when I thought about this sermon. Or maybe you're thinking about people. Perhaps it's a sibling, a parent, a child, a friend. I'm not asking you to pretend your differences don't matter. They do. I'm not asking you to surrender your convictions either. Please, please don't. And I don't think anybody here would do it even if I asked. I'm asking for something a little smaller and much harder. The next time you think about that person, pause. Before you remember how they voted, remember how they laughed. Before you remember the argument, remember the birthday, the wedding, the hospital visit, the casserole they brought after your surgery. Remember that long before they became the other side. They were simply another human being trying, however imperfectly, to make sense of the world. And then ask one question. What pain, what fear, what hope might be shaping the story I cannot yet see? That question may not change their mind. It may not even change the relationship, but it just might change you. And sometimes that is where the healing begins. As I've reflected on that Thanksgiving with Yvonne, and I thought about those remarkable days in Denver, and I've listened to the wisdom of Frederick Douglass, Dr. King, Sharon Risher, and Thich Nhat Hanh, I've come to believe something I didn't fully understand before. Hope is not optimism. Optimism says things will get better. It will definitely get better. That's optimism. Hope says I have a responsibility to help make things better. That distinction matters. Being the change matters because there are days when optimism feels impossible. When another act of violence shakes us to the core, when another election deepens our divisions, when another podcast seems unbearable, when another difficult conversation leaves us totally discouraged. On those days, optimism may fail us, but hope may not. Václav Havel once wrote, "Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well. It is the certainty that something is worth doing, regardless of how it turns out." That is the hope I'm talking about, the hope that sustained abolitionists, the hope that carried civil rights, the hope that has always sustained people of faith when history seemed to be moving in the wrong direction. Hope has never been passive. It is always, and will always require courage. And it always begins with ordinary people just like you and I. Neighbors, families, congregants, people who believe that relationships matter. When I think about our own Unitarian tradition, I realize this hope is woven into the very principles that bind us together. Our first principle reminds us that every person possesses inherent worth and dignity, not because they agree with us or vote like us or have earned it, but simply because they are human. If that principle means anything, it must include the person whose yard sign frustrates us, the relative whose Facebook post makes us cringe, the neighbor whose worldview feels impossible to understand. Our second principle calls us to seek justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It doesn't ask us to choose between them. Justice without compassion easily becomes vengeance. Compassion without justice becomes complacency. Our calling is to hold both together. And our third principle reminds us that acceptance is not endorsement. Acceptance is choosing to begin with relationship. It is believing another person is always more than the worst opinion they have ever expressed. And that's hard. That belief changed me in Denver. I arrived convinced that I understood people across the table, and I left realizing I had misunderstood their humanity. Not every disagreement, those remain, but I discovered something more important. Understanding another person's story doesn't require surrendering convictions. Frederick Douglass understood this. Dr. King understood this. Sharon Risher understood this. None of them surrendered their moral clarity, but neither did they surrender their belief that people could change. That is the essence of what King called the beloved community. Not a community without conflict, a community that refuses to let conflict have the final word. Friends, I don't know what the next election will bring. I hope it's a blue wave. I don't know what tomorrow's headlines will say, but I do know this. History has never changed, was never been changed by people who believed nothing could change. It has always been changed by ordinary people who refused to give up on one another. Perhaps that is our calling. Not to win every argument, but to build communities where transformation remains possible. To become the congregation where people with different experiences, different beliefs, and different politics discover they can still worship together, eat together, be a family together, serve together, grieve together, celebrate, and build a more just world together. If we can do that here, perhaps others will discover they can do it too. Because beloved community doesn't begin in Washington or in our state capitals or on television. It begins around a kitchen table, a conference table, a communion table. One conversation, one act of grace, one decision to stay at the table. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. That was magnificent. Our musical celebration today is an instrumental piece, Shall We Gather at the River, arranged by Aaron Copeland and played by Anne Quackenbus.
So may you leave this place with courageous hearts. May you speak the truth with conviction. May you listen with generosity. May you seek justice with humility. May you resist the temptation to confuse disagreement with hatred. May you remember that every person you meet carries a story you have not yet heard. And when the conversations become difficult, when the headlines tempt you towards despair, when you are convinced that nothing can ever change, may you remember that democracy is not sustained simply by elections. It is sustained by neighbors who refuse to stop seeing one another as neighbors. May we become those neighbors. May we become that community. May we have the courage to stay at the table. Amen. And I have my choice of snuffers. Please join me now in words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame